I had the privilege of earning my undergrad degree at Atlantic Union College. And of course, I was a biochemistry major, so that was my home, Atlantic Union College's science complex. And up in those second story windows, I can remember um, having didactics in the morning, but then having lab in the afternoon. And um, you, it's interesting how it kind of patterns life. Where in the early part of life, that's where you learn, but then in the latter part, that's where you actually have that lab where you're going to implement what you learn. And it's also why I can remember my mom saying, "One day you'll understand." It's almost like, later on there'll be the laboratory that will help you understand. But the idea just being that we would have experiments where um, where we would need various tools in order to carry out the experiments. One of the tools was a crucible. So, what was the function of the crucible, you may ask? Well, from time to time, you would have maybe two compounds that you would need to bring together to cause a reaction of some sort. Well, one compound at times might have impurities. And so it was your task to actually put that compound in the crucible and expose it to some burning, expose it to some heat. And that heat was not just random, it served a purpose. It would cook off the impurities. We're going somewhere. The burn would have a purpose. Well, you can see from this beautiful campus that outside of that window, it might be like a Tuesday afternoon, and it might be a beautiful New England day, and you might see people with blankets spread and them actually enjoying one another, maybe someone tossing a football around, and you would look out and you would long to go out and enjoy some portion of the day. And that longing might inspire you to rush your experiment, to rush the compound's time in the crucible. And my goodness, that would be a mistake. Why would that be a mistake? Because if you did not give that compound sufficient time in the crucible, the result would be that when you took that compound now and brought it to react with the other compound, no reaction. No reaction. It had insufficiently been exposed to the heat, and now it still had the impurities, and now there was no reaction. So, guess what you had to do? You had to start the experiment all over again. And if it had been your goal to save time, you had done the opposite. You had just wasted a tremendous amount of time, and it's virtually guaranteed you were not going to be able to enjoy any aspect of that afternoon. So, the burn of the crucible has a purpose. I need to say that again. The burn in the crucible, it has a purpose. And so I want to talk to you today about five things that burn might be doing. Okay, five things that burn might be doing. So what are those five things? The first is the burn might just be preparing you. The burn might be preparing you. Second, the burn might be positioning you. Third, the burn might be freeing you. Number four, we're going to take a look at how the burn might be transforming you. And then number five, we'll take a look at how the burn might actually be calling you. So let's get into it by talking about how the burn may very well be preparing you. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is a story that we find in Daniel chapter 3. Daniel chapter 3, where we're going to encounter a scene and scenario with a furnace. But before we do that, let's step back and let's ask ourselves a question. Who was Daniel? Who exactly was Daniel? I find it very helpful to pause and consider the author that has written the content. because very often you're going to find that their life bleeds into their content. Their life bleeds into their content and provides a very helpful context. So that I think is very true for Daniel. So who exactly was Daniel? Well, you see, Daniel's claim to fame is that he purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself, and with, of all things, the portion of the king's meat. He would not defile himself. You can find it in Daniel chapter 1, where he talks about the fact that he will not defile himself. And we can go there. Let's go to Daniel chapter 1. And it's a powerful verse. And it reads, starting at verse 5, and the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among these were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. So the king this is pretty straightforward. I'm going to give you guys a seat at my table, and I'm going to give you this food. But in verse 8, but Daniel purposed in his heart, right, that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank there. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. All right? So it's interesting to pick the story up there, but it facilitates us asking the question, what is the condition of Daniel's mind when he comes to this place where he says, I will not defile myself? What is his mindset? What has he been through? There's nothing that can kill scripture more effectively than when it's read out of context, when you don't drench it with the context so that you can then understand it, so that it can be brought to life. What is the condition of Daniel's mind when he decides he will not defile himself with a portion of the king's meat? Now, I use that word mind, but a mind does not occur in a vacuum. It occurs in a context. So let's talk about Daniel. So we know that Daniel is about 17 around this time. He's a teenager, okay? We know that he is part of Israel's nobility class, all right? We also know that King Nebuchadnezzar, he chose best of the best, all right? So even though he conquered the Israelites, he doesn't just destroy them all. He says, no, we're going to take the best of the best, and I'm going to leverage that human capital into building my kingdom. What an astute king, you know? And so he's going to leverage this human capital. And so then we know that Daniel is intelligent and he's handsome. He is a eligible bachelor, if you will. All right. What is exactly his mindset? All right. And so it's important to understand that when we're talking about the mind, if the bulb is the brain, then the light that emanates from the bulb would be the mind. Okay? So you have a brain, but those thoughts, the brilliance of those thoughts is the light that emanates from that bulb. And so that's what we talk about being the mind. And another interesting thing that I need you to understand is that the brain, the building block unit of the brain is the neuron. And so I need you to see that one neuron can synapse with other neurons. So one neuron can synapse with up to 10,000 to 250,000 neurons, all right? But those synapses are not permanent. So what affects how your brain will network itself includes the experiences that you have. And those experiences you interact with physically, but also the very thoughts you have will affect how your brain networks itself. So let's take a look at the immersive experience that Daniel goes through. Let's take a look at the immersive experience, what that young man went through. So first of all, it becomes clear that Daniel goes through a siege. Okay, Daniel undergoes a siege. What exactly is a siege? Because it sounds like such of a benign word. A siege means another nation comes and surrounds that territory and surrounds it for a long period of time. So no resources can come into that region, and it just has to subsist on whatever it had starting at that point of the siege. And Israel is brought to its knees. Okay, Israel is brought to its knees. They experience a level of desperation. Okay, where like women are eating their babies. Okay, this is a severe experience. They experience a siege. They experience hunger that is unimaginable, and it leads them to do things that are beyond the scope of our understanding. The siege gets that severe, and eventually the Babylonians come in and they conquer Israel. So, what are the things affecting Daniel's mind? So we understand he's gone through a siege, right? He's seen his people suffer acutely. All right. Now, also we find out that he is taken from Israel back to Babylon. I need you to think about the experiences. I want you to see the bonds that are broken between mother and child, and I want you to think about Daniel perhaps seeing some of his loved ones die, or having those bonds ruptured where he never sees them alive again. Okay, these are some of the very real experiences Daniel may very well have had. And some of you see how crippling it can be to lose one loved one, much less what it is that this young man goes through. How much loss had he witnessed? All right. Okay, but it's not just being taken out of Israel and having those relationships destroyed. Now you're brought into this new setting. If you're an immigrant, you know how disruptive and how challenging it can be for you to have to forge a new life in a new setting, all the missteps that can happen. And this young man is being plucked into that kind of an experience as a 17-year-old. I need you to think about what were the experiences and that shaped the mind that is saying, I will not defile myself. What else had he been through? Okay, so Nebuchadnezzar was very frustrated with King Zedekiah or Jehoiakim, because he had expected that Zedekiah was going to function basically as a magistrate, basically running Jerusalem, but of course collecting taxes on behalf of Babylon. That was the agreement. In fact, you had Jeremiah telling King Zedekiah, honor your commitment. Just honor the commitment and it will be well with us. This is God ordained. And so you had other prophets saying to Zedekiah, no, God is going to break the chain. And so a deceiving spirit had taken control of the tongues of the false prophets. And so Zedekiah listened to them and they rebelled against Babylon. And so now this is why Babylon came against Israel and ended up destroying their temple, and also taking a number of the captives over to Babylon. But the fury of Nebuchadnezzar against King Zedekiah is demonstrated by what he does to Zedekiah. But as you're listening to this, this is not just done to Zedekiah, this is done to all the Israelites. So Nebuchadnezzar takes Zedekiah and he says, oh, those are your 10 sons. He kills the 10 sons right before the king. I need you to understand the pain and the magnitude of the pain that you would experience watching your 10 sons get killed. The Babylonians don't stop there. They said, and by the way, that will be the last thing you see. And they gouge out the king's eyes. All right. Now, the significance of doing this to the king is it doesn't just punish the king, it punishes all of the Israelites. It touches Daniel. There's a reason that our attention as a nation is so acute in protecting our president, because we know whatever happens to the president is done to all of us. And that is the reason for the elaborate nature of the Secret Service. That is the reason that there's literally a fighting force protecting the president, because we know that if whatever's done to him is done to all of us, he is a symbol of power. And this is the ultimate symbol of, of domination. This kind of an insult done to the king does this to all of the Israelites. This is mentally damaging. What is the condition of Daniel's mind as he purposes in his heart to not defile himself? And besides the psychological warfare, the warfare is brought even closer with Daniel in terms of Isaiah chapter 39 and verse 7 telling us that Daniel, and it said the sons that would issue from you. So Isaiah is warning Hezekiah the king, look, after you just allowed those Babylonians to tore all of your wares and your treasures, the Babylonians will carry those treasures off back to Babylon, and they will also take your sons and turn them into eunuchs. This is what Isaiah chapter 39 verse 7 tells us. All right? So just think about that. Not only has he gone through all that stuff, but he has also been castrated. Okay? But this story doesn't stop there. Daniel, that name, it means judge of God. The Babylonians renamed Daniel Prince of Bel. Prince of Bel. It's almost like saying Prince of Satan. Okay, because of course you know the Israelis talk about false gods. They know that Bel is a false god. So it's like when he hears his name, it's almost like saying Prince of Satan. Okay, that is how insulting it is to him. So I want you to see the warfare, both national, psychological, and physical, that is waged against Daniel, that is waged against his mindset. But in that context, he purposes in his heart that he will not defile himself. I came to encourage somebody that has been going through it. I came to encourage somebody who has been in the midst of a war, your finances being ravaged, your mindset being tested and assaulted, your very well-being being called into question. I came to remind you to commit yourself to not defile yourself. To not defile yourself, to be encouraged, to understand that there's a God above who sees you, who's collecting your tears, who is tracking them, and who has a plan for you. And so Daniel, he purposes, he challenges the prince of the eunuchs, and he says, look, man, I'm not going to defile myself, okay, by eating of the king's meat and drinking his wine. And so Daniel goes to Ashpenaz and he says, look, just test us for 10 days. Don't have us eat those things. We're just going to eat of the king's, we're just going to eat of, vegetables, and test us after 10 days and see how we're doing. And so that's the proposal. What a bold proposal. Only giving yourself 10 days to show a phenotypic, to show a change in your physical demeanor just based on what you're eating. What a profound message to us. But after the 10 days, Daniel and his friends were found to appear healthier, and this was pretty impressive. So their portion was taken away, and they were allowed to continue on those 3 years. We're getting somewhere. I want to remind you that one of the things the burn can be doing is it can be positioning you depending on how you respond. Your burn can be positioning you. And so what this burn has positioned Daniel for, what this challenge has positioned them for, is they appeared 10 times wiser than their counterparts. They appeared healthier just after 10 days. But at the end of the 3 years, when Nebuchadnezzar is conducting an oral exam of these people that have gone through this 3 years of training, Daniel and his friends, they appeared 10 times better than their counterparts. Don't miss that. Your burn can be preparing you, okay? Depending on whether you go through it with faith or not, okay? So please do not miss that. So step 2, your burn is positioning you. Your burn is positioning you. And so what do we mean by your burn is positioning you? Well, you'll recall in the story in Daniel chapter 2 that King Nebuchadnezzar is given a dream. He's given a dream. He's gone to bed. He was thinking about, hey, what is to come? And then in response to that, he's given a dream. But God is so amazing. God is so powerful because he's given the dream, but he's not allowed to remember it. Hello, somebody. Okay? God will literally create a scenario that he's got a plan to plug you into if you would just stick with him. Okay? If you would just stick with him. He gives him the dream, but he doesn't allow him to remember it because he has prepared. God has prepared a dream interpreter. Well, of course, you know the scenario in Daniel chapter 2 where King Nebuchadnezzar is very frustrated that he can't remember the dream. And so he goes to his wise men, the astrologers and the magicians, and he says, look, guys, I'm a little embarrassed, I'll admit, but I've had a dream, but I can't remember the dream, but I'm pretty clear it's got some significance. So here's what I'm going to need from you guys. I'm going to need you to tell me what the dream was, and I'm then going to need you to interpret it, okay? I don't need that nonsense that you guys do where you pull this from this and you pull that from there. No, the very evidence that your interpretation is accurate is that you'll be able to tell me what the dream was, okay? So I need you to tell me what the dream was, then I need you to interpret it. Now, and I get the feeling this is important. So if you don't do this, I don't have a need for you. And we don't keep things around here in Babylon just for the fun of it. So I'm going to destroy all of you, and I'm going to turn those beautiful houses that we have you put up in, I'm going to turn them to rubble. Okay? All right? So let's get clear. I need an interpretation to the dream, and I also need you to, of course, remind me what that dream is. And that'll be the ultimate evidence to me that you have the ability to interpret the dream. All right. Who wants to go first? A king. Have you lost your mind? I doubt they said that, but a king. No king would ask that of their wise men. All you gotta do is tell us the dream, and we'll give you the interpretation. But I can't remind you of a dream that you forgot. I mean, obviously, if you forgot it, how can I possibly remember it? Okay. That's not possible. The only person that would be able to do that is the gods, and their dwelling is not with man. I love how, in stressful situations, people will be allowed to tell on themselves. Their dwelling is not with men. What they really needed to say was, their dwelling is not with us. Their dwelling is not with us. Because actually, God does dwell with a man, and his name is Daniel. And the king is thrown into rage. He's like, you're wasting time. I know your goal is just to waste time. Would you tell me the dream and its interpretation already? You know what? Never mind. Look, Arioch, destroy them all. Destroy them all, and do it quickly. I am sick of these people filling my head with nonsense, as obviously there is no point in keeping them around. Destroy them all. And so Daniel catches wind of what is going on. And so he's like, man, what's going on? What is the urgency? So he's like, look, man, wise men were challenged to explain something to the king. I know you're still in training, but whatever the case, all y'all are jacked. All y'all are jacked. So the king has given the decree to destroy all the wise men. And so Daniel's like, okay. You man, you mind if I access the king? Yeah, that's right. You guys are kind of close. He does like you. Yeah, go see what you can do. So Daniel, of course, appeals to the king. King, I think I can get a solution for you. Is that right, Daniel? I really believe I can help you with this. I just need some time. Just need some time, but I'm pretty confident. You know, Daniel, you you have really been able to honor your word, and there's no secret that I really admire your level of intellect and skill and insight. So if you say that all you need is 24 hours, I'm going to give you the 24 hours. I'm going to hold off for a moment on destroying these wise men, and I'm going to give you those 24 hours. You come back and you let me know if you've got something. But no, you've proven yourself to me, so I'm going to give you those 24 hours because I can tell that this is something important. I just can't remember it. King, I got you. I got you. I got you. Don't worry. I'll be back. We'll get this all cleared up. All right. Go do your thing. Then he goes back to his friends and he lets them know, guys, the stakes are high. The stakes are high. We need a prayer session. Okay, not a prayer, a prayer. Prayer. Have you ever gotten serious with your prayer? I'm not talking about where you can even sit down and just bow your head. I'm talking getting down on the knees, getting down on fours and pleading with God for deliverance. Daniel unites with his three friends. And what's interesting is it's pointed out that he then goes to that God brings the interpretation in a dream. Now, a dream would imply that Daniel is sleeping. So imagine that your life depends on what transpires next, and he has the faith to go to sleep. And it's in that faith and it's in that going to sleep that God reveals to him the dream. So it's interesting because when he's gone to bed, he doesn't have the answer at that point. He doesn't have the answer, and he goes to bed. And God gives him the answer in the dream. My word, sometimes go to sleep. Sometimes you gotta go to sleep. Of course, I'm joking when I say that, but I'm serious that you gotta trust. You gotta trust God. You gotta trust him. You gotta have faith. And so then Daniel goes back to Nebuchadnezzar and he explains the vision. And so Nebuchadnezzar asked Daniel something very interesting. I want you to see that when people are near the crown, when people are near power, very often they are power mongering. They're very hungry for power. So you see the captain of the king's guard that brings them, and he says, I found a man. Okay, I found a man. Yeah, Arioch, sounds like you were really looking for him, huh? You've really been searching for him. Just under I found a man. Give me some credits. I'm responsible for this solution. I mean, just power hungry. So it is in that context that the king says the following to Daniel. Listen to the question. Art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen, and the interpretation thereof? Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king. Now think about the power-hungry nature that most people would have as they're surrounded, as they are so close to power. All right? This is a floater. This is one where Daniel has the opportunity to really shine and draw attention and glory to himself. Okay? And you can see why very often God can't trust us with power, because we would draw the attention to ourselves rather than pointing it to where it really should be pointing to. So watch how Daniel then answers. But there's a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are these. Okay? All right, so he then goes forward and he explains, but he puts the glory where it belongs. When God blesses you, will you direct the glory where it belongs? Can God trust you with fame? Can God trust you with power? Will you direct the glory to God? What an amazing example we see set forth by Daniel. And so, again, we see that Daniel interprets the dream, and he explains that thou, king, art the head of gold. All right? What's interesting when God is working with these prophets is their life is in their life is vulnerable, because it's one thing to tell the king you are the head of gold, all right, but next after thee, the king is not pleased to hear this. Next after thee, there will be other kingdoms, whether it's the Mede of the Persians, or it's going to be the belly and thighs of brass, which represent Greece, or the legs of iron, which represents, of course, Rome, or the mixed iron and clay, which represents sort of the end time kingdoms. The point being, Nebuchadnezzar, your kingdom has a shelf life. That is a dagger. That is a dagger right through the heart of King Nebuchadnezzar, where he has to say to himself, my word, my kingdom has a shelf life. This is not a pleasant sound to a king. They want to hear, O king, live forever. That's not just, cute. That's how they want their programming. They want to constantly be thinking of legacy and dynasty and forever. Instead, he hears he's got a shelf life. His kingdom has a shelf life. This is not pleasant to hear. But what he is pleased is to know what the vision is, and that he can be reminded. This is proof that Daniel's interpretation is very likely to be true when he can do something as mysterious as to be able to recall the dream. And so he explains the significance of the image. Isn't it interesting how we can respond by building our own image, by building and erecting our own idol? So after hearing that he represents the king, the head of gold, Nebuchadnezzar then erects a statue that is all gold. The message being, my kingdom is everlasting. But there's some added reasons why Nebuchadnezzar's behavior is understandable. Whenever we read scripture, it's really important to get into the skin of the characters and understand, why would you erect an image of gold? Yeah, kings, of course, like, dynasties. Why would you demand that everyone bow to this idol? What is going on in Babylon that would make you engage in this strange activity? Erect this gold, and demand that your leaders, not just the population of Babylon, but especially the leaders, are to bow to this image. Let's think about that for a second. What historians mention is that Babylon had sustained a rebellion so severe that Nebuchadnezzar's very existence was in question. It's to the point where Nebuchadnezzar himself had to engage in hand-to-hand combat to quell and put down this rebellion. Okay, that's how severe the rebellion was. And so Nebuchadnezzar thinks to himself, how can I unify my administration around a common vision, a vision of our kingdom being everlasting? How can I put down this rebellion and show that the rebellion has truly been put down? Well, what could be better than having all my administrators bow to my view, to my vision, to my image of our future. And anyone who doesn't bow to that, that would be a clear sign of disrespect. Now, deep down, the king knows, even if there was a traitor, he wouldn't dare be in opposition at this point. He knows this. So really, this is just an act of a unified front. This is a proverbial floater that he's throwing to them. Like, at least you guys know that you can't do no foolishness right now. But I want to show that my kingdom is unified. I want them to be clear on what they're unified around, and that is the everlasting nature of Babylon. Okay? And so this is a floater. So you can imagine the chest pain Nebuchadnezzar feels when he learns that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are refusing to bow down. You see, I don't believe Nebuchadnezzar is thinking that their loyalty is in question. In fact, he's very impressed with them. He set Daniel up as his second in command, and of course, Daniel brought his friends into position. And so he's like, hey, this isn't targeted at them. This is to make sure that others don't want to be the traitors. But I cannot tolerate any defiance. I just put down a rebellion. In fact, those fiery furnaces that are around, they weren't there as an execution tool. This is a construction site. So it's very likely Babylon was in the process of repairing some of the damages that had taken place during the rebellion. And so it is an afterthought when he's like, look, you know what? If you do not bow down, I'm going to throw you in one of those furnaces, over there. This is an afterthought. What traitor would be stupid enough to oppose me now? But then he learns that these 3 Hebrew boys have chosen not to bow. And he's like, man, I kind of forgot that they don't worship other gods. They're not going to bow. I forgot about that. But I don't have a choice, because after that last rebellion, I can't have any further rebellion. Let me give him one more chance. You know what, guys? Look, if I give you one more chance, look, man, would you please bow? Look, I can't beg you in front of all these people, but I really need an act of unison right now. You get what I'm saying? Okay, I need some unison. I could appreciate your cooperation. And listen to their response. O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. Stop. This is a high-stake moment. You can feel the tension. You can see all the leaders looking at what's about to happen next. You can see those politicians that are envious of the position of those 3 Hebrew boys saying, oh boy, oh goody, what's about to happen now? You can see them salivating as you're like, could they be this stupid? And they respond, we are not careful to answer you in this matter. Check it out. They says, if it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. And he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. In verse 18, Daniel chapter 3, verse 18, it reads, but if not. Look, we are confident that our God can deliver us from the fiery furnace and out of your hand. Verse 18, but if not. In case he doesn't, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Now, in this context, where Nebuchadnezzar needs a unified front, we have this situation. And also there's another thing that's happening. Nebuchadnezzar is rebuking God. He's saying, your kingdom will not be forever. My kingdom will be forever. This is an ultimate sign of rebellion. And God needs some folk to stand up because he wants to rebuke that image. And God gets 3 to stand up. and say, no, we're not bound to that image. Okay, we're not bound to that. Nebuchadnezzar is sent into a fit of rage, tells 7 of his strongest military guard, look, take them and toss them into that furnace, and before you do, though, heat it up 7 times hotter. Okay, they do that, and to document the authenticity of the heat, it kills the very people who threw them into the furnace. So it was hot, but it throws them into the furnace. And Nebuchadnezzar can't believe his eyes. It's like, psst, uh, didn't we didn't we throw 3 people into that fiery furnace? It's 3. Kind of 3. How many of you see in there? It's 4. It's 4. And not just any 4. One of them looks like a son of the gods. One of them looks like the son of the gods. Your burn is positioning you. Your burn is positioning you. It's arranging a situation where God can make a testimony, where God can make a statement. Don't miss that. The very thing that you're tempted to despise and fear, if you work in partnership with God, amazing things can happen. The child that is trying you, the job that is testing you, the medical condition that is threatening you. If you work in partnership with God, an amazing story can be born from that. Okay? And so, of course, the king calls them out and basically, look, blessed be the name of the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, because no God saves like this. No God saves in this manner. That is the true God. Your burn is positioning you.